What's up and welcome back to another live stream unboxing review with Gizmo Slip Tech. Today we've got the MSI Cyborg 15. This RTX 4060 only costs $1099, but is it actually worth buying? So today we're going to find out. We're going to test it. We're going to play games with it, hopefully. Hopefully we don't run into any issues. I've installed a few games, and I repackaged it back up together. I did the driver updates and Windows updates, all that. So it should be good to go for some testing and benchmarking today as well. We're going to test the display and see how bright and vibrant it is. We're going to test the keyboard, the trackpad. We're going to check out the ports. We're also going to take the bottom off and see what it's like on the inside, what that thermal cooling solution looks like, and see what kind of upgradability it has, as well as seeing how hard it is to take this thing apart. We're going to evaluate the build quality, how flexy it is, and we're going to compare and contrast this against the other laptops in the $1,100 price segment. I've actually got them already pulled up. So we're going to start with this comparison, at least a feature spec comparison, right away here at the beginning. We've got the MSI Delta 15. Well, first, what are the specs on our Cyborg that we're dealing with today? Okay, so we've got the MSI Cyborg 15. It's a i7 12650H. I did buy this from Best Buy, and there is a link in the video description down below if you want to check this out. And there's a link to my comparison shopping sheet as well if you'd like to check that out. And here's where you can easily find links to all these other laptops that I'm about to talk about. Now, I bought this from Best Buy on March 14th, apparently, is when it was actually delivered a couple days ago. But I did order this a while ago. It took almost three, 4 weeks for it to come in. Now it's currently in stock, so you can buy this today if you end up deciding you want to. I'm not necessarily recommending that yet. We're going to test it and see what we think about this thing. There's definitely some major drawbacks to this Cyborg 15 you need to be aware of before you buy it, right? So anyway, let's continue on. So this is where I bought it. The specs on this guy are kind of impressive for the money. You got the i7 processor, RTX 4060, but it's only a 45 watt. You also have 8 gigs of DDR5 4800 RAM. So DDR5 is supposed to be okay, better in these single channel memory orientation than DDR4 is. So maybe we'll get some better performance out of only one stick of 8 gigs of DDR5. I'm assuming it's a one stick of 8 gigs. Now, I still recommend 16 gigs of RAM in every laptop, pretty much, if you want to be able to play every single game. Now, plenty of games will play just fine on 8 gigs, but some games are going to really chug only on 8 gigs. And if it's single channel, in theory, dual channel usually offers better performance. Now, this is the laptop, if you are going to save your money and you want to get the best possible performance, this laptop should deliver far better performance than this Cyborg 15 and at a lower price point. Now, this MSI Delta 15, it's not necessarily a perfect laptop. There's still going to be issues with it, but it is a very lightweight laptop, supposed to weigh only 4.2 pounds, fairly thin. It's not the highest power limits, but it's got a nice full HD 240 hertz display. I believe that's a 300 nits display, so it should be brighter and more vibrant than the one we have in this guy. You get 16 gigs of RAM instead of only 8, and you get an RX 6700M with a Ryzen 7 8-core 5800H. So this guy is like probably the top competitor right now. It's only on sale temporarily from Best Buy. There's a link again on my sheet if you want to check out this MSI Delta 15. This deal won't be up here forever though. This laptop is going to sell out or go off sale, and so you got to take advantage of it when you got it if you're interested in this one. Now, the Acer Nitro 5, this guy costs $999. And it comes with an RTX 4050. You can get it equipped with an RTX 4060 for a little bit more. I'm curious about the display on this guy. I actually did get this confirmed to be shipped to me yesterday or like today. So it's not arrived yet, but I'll be doing a live stream unboxing of this Acer Nitro 5 with an i5 12600H. I think it has an RTX 4060 in mind. 16 gigs of DDR5, 512 gig. Again, links are in this sheet if you're interested in checking out this laptop. I did end up buying this one from Newegg. And so I definitely would recommend considering the Acer Nitro 5 as an alternative to this one. The Gigabyte G5, which I've already done a detailed live stream unboxing of this guy, this Gigabyte G5. The main issue with it was the power adapter was going out on me in the middle of playing games. So I don't know if that's specific to my unit or it's happening to anyone else. But I may end up returning this and then getting a new unit that has a different power adapter, and maybe then it'll perform properly. But that was the biggest issue I had with it. It definitely had a little bit better screen than what I'm expecting on this laptop today. Wow, it's already on sale. $50 off for the Gigabyte G5 right now. That's interesting. Limited time off. $50 off on this Gigabyte G5. Interesting. Was not expecting that to happen so quickly. Lenovo Ideapad 3. So this one has a Ryzen 7 7735HS. This is a previous gen processor right here. RTX 4050, 16 gigs of DDR5, 512 gig SSD, and a full HD 120 Hz display. This is going to be very similar to the Lenovo I tested against the Steam Deck a few days ago. So this laptop is also going to be a decent bang for the buck, potentially. Should have a higher TDP limit than the Cyborg with the RTX 4050, though, and it costs the same price. So, and hopefully this display might be also a little better than the one we've got today. We don't know yet, really. We gotta do some testing on the Cyborg and see exactly what we got, right? So, overall, I think the Cyborg is a really interesting value proposition for people. It certainly has weaker internals and weaker display options than, say, if you were to buy last gen at the same price. There's quite a few RTX 3060s or maybe even 3070s that end up dropping down to this price range, or Radeon GPUs, like in the Zephyrus G14 was $1,000 recently, as well as the MSI Delta 15, and those laptops do come with better displays than this. So that's probably the biggest con going into this that I think we're going to run into is either lower power limits on the GPU and CPU, and then potentially the display. I think I'm going to like just about everything else about this laptop. If you're the kind of person that wants to maximize your performance, I'm thinking the Cyborg's probably not going to be for you, but maybe it's going to surprise us, and maybe 45 watts will actually be enough power to really get some good performance out of the RTX 4060. So this is the outer layer box. This was shipped inside of another box. So this is the second layer, and then you get another box inside. And this box is actually pretty dang stylized. Look at that. It's got a cool MSI Cyborg 15 design to it. I do like this box, especially for the price point. Usually you don't get any kind of fancy box in this price category. So here's the laptop. Let's open it up. Shaboom. All right, so there it is. We've got a metal top deck right here, and notice how thin this thing is. It's a very, very thin laptop overall, weighing less than 5 pounds. So when you judge this laptop, you do got to judge it based on its weight class against the other laptops in this category, right? So, and there definitely are some very good things about this laptop, and obviously some cons as well. We're gonna try to go over all of those today. So you get some stickers with the laptop. I guess these are, oh, it must be inverted because you're gonna stick them on stuff. I was like, none of this stuff is spelling real words, but yeah, they must be inverted because you go stick them on other stuff. Your quick guide here. And so here's the quick guide. MSI limited warranty. You get 12 months of warranty. And here's the support number if you need support. We'll save that number if you need support. A 12-month warranty. And that is not accidental coverage, just regular warranty. This will go over all your ports and everything about the laptop. Nothing too complex about this laptop though. Now inside of here we have our power brick. Let's take a look at that. So first we have our power cable, about 6 feet long, Delta power brick. This is only a 120 watt power brick. So it's very small and very light. It's definitely going to be a very portable power brick for you if you need to take this around with you on the go. I mean, we are dealing with fairly low TDP components in this laptop, so it makes sense, right? That the power brick would not need to be very big. That's actually, I think, an advantage of lower TDP laptops, being able to have that smaller power brick. We do have a little fiber cloth in here on the keyboard. And so there's the laptop right there. All right, so the laptop is turned off right now. Let's go ahead and do a flex test going around the laptop. No flex, minimal flex is a little bit around the keyboard, but very little flex. It's actually surprisingly solid. Minimal flex on the side, no flex over here in the corner. A little bit of flex, but it's more, it feels like I'm just pushing down on the rubber feet. The laptop chassis is actually not bending that much. In the middle, just a little bit of flex. No flex in the corners again. A little bit of flex over here on the right. Coming through the middle, a bit of flex right here. Not much flex in the middle, actually. That's pretty good rigidity overall. Going through the keyboard, a bit of flex in the keyboard, but actually very minimal, very rigid, sturdy feeling build so far. Let's go ahead and just do a hinge test. All right, so the hinge can go all the way back. So if you need to share the screen with someone across from you. I gotta say, the hinge itself feels pretty solid, but there's a little bit of wobble to it when you set it somewhere. But it feels really solid. These hinge designs from MSI, I'm not sure if these are gonna last a super long time or not. It all depends on how they've actually designed the connectors. Historically, MSI hinges have failed, so I do recommend extended warranties on most laptops, but especially ones like this. There we go. All right, so that's kind of like the feel of the laptop. It feels surprisingly solid with the metal top deck. That gives it a little bit more of a premium feel than some of these all plastic laptops. And it feels more rigid, I would say, than most laptops at this price point. So that's kind of like, I guess, 2 points for this laptop in its favor. This says MSI True Gaming. On the bottom here, you can see it's an all plastic bottom and it's translucent. You can see through this into the motherboard here to underneath the plastic here. So that's kind of cool that it's translucent. Looks like all you need is a Phillips head screwdriver to get this thing off, but you're probably going to want it to be a magnetic head screwdriver. And there's a link in the description to this toolkit if you want to pick up the similar toolkit to what I'm using to open these laptops. This is an excellent toolkit for handling laptops, and I've had the toolkit now for like 5 or 6 years. It's been great. All right, looks like there is a factory seal screw. MSI likes to do this. Into the AM, I got my astronaut shirt on today. Link in the description to Into the AM if you want to pick up some nice shirts. They're high quality, they last a long time, and I've enjoyed using them. If you do use the link, it does help support me as a content creator. But yeah, if you're just in the market for some shirts, there you go. Not the easiest laptop to take apart with this. You definitely would want the plastic pry tools to get this off, because it kind of wraps around the backside. But in terms of the internals, let's check it out. All right, so this looks like a very bare bones internal setup. So this is the battery. I don't see any rated wattage on it. It's a 53 watt hour battery, all right? So not a very high watt battery, but it's also kind of a lower power draw processor and GPU. So I'm guessing you're gonna get like between 3 to 5 hours of battery life on it anyway. Plus the screen is a lower brightness display, so it's not gonna take as much juice as these brighter, more vibrant displays, especially the mini LED displays. Let's take a look at the RAM here and the SSD. Looks like it's a Samsung SSD. It says Samsung Electronics at the bottom. It's a 512 gig SSD though. Our RAM, you can see it's an AX201. AX201 NGW. I've had a problem getting the shroud to pop up before. I'm actually gonna use the prying tool here. Take the battery connector out. Huh, the battery connector does not want to come. There we go, finally got it. Okay, so whenever you're dealing with something, the metal, like this metal shroud, you want to disconnect that battery, because otherwise you're going to have some real problems. Alright, so I got to be careful. We also got this tape right here. Let me refocus this again. We also got to get this tape up. Alright, so that's good. You gotta get it to disconnect. from all the different areas. And there's our RAM. You can see we've got one open SODIMM slot, one closed SODIMM slot, or sorry, one utilized SODIMM slot. Let's go ahead and pop this up. Samsung 1RX16PC5, so DDR5 4800 memory. Some decent RAM, not the most expensive RAM necessarily, but I love that it's DDR5 in this laptop. That should be helpful. If you want to improve performance, I definitely recommend a second stick of Samsung RAM, and you can match that precisely now that we've taken this cover off and given you an opportunity to look underneath. Initial thoughts on this. We've got our left and right audio speakers. These speakers don't seem that big. I guess they're decent for the size of this laptop. I don't know. The thing is, there's a lot of empty space here, right? So we could have better speakers here. We could have more battery put in here. There's only one SSD slot. I wish there was two SSD slots. It's kind of sad that there's not, at least two SSD slots. Notice that we only have one fan in this laptop, right? Only one fan. That's going to be interesting to see what kind of performance you can get with only one fan, right? These new RTX 4000 series, they do have a 4nm node process, so maybe it'll still put out some good performance. Decent enough to at least play 1080p games on medium to high settings is my hope. But we already know that the GPU is supposed to only be 45 watts. Now this, I believe, is going to be your GPU. This is going to be your CPU. Notice that the two ends here end on the CPU, so hopefully the CPU performance is still going to be pretty good. We've got predominantly shared heat pipes here with one heat pipe directed to the GPU only, one shared heat pipe here, and then we've got the VRMs covered with this pad, as well as right here we've got the VRMs with the pad right here. And we've got two exhausts, one on the back, one on the side. This is on the left side of the laptop, so it's not going to be blowing on your mouse hand. Like most laptops do have exhausts on the right and left side, and so you usually do end up with exhaust blowing on your mouse hand if you're right-handed, but you won't have that problem with this laptop unless you're left-handed. So yeah, that's kind of, I guess, a brief overview. This is definitely a very bare bones internals to this laptop without a doubt. It really, like, just looking at the internals here, you can basically tell the price point of this laptop is on the low end. This is not a high-end internal setup for sure. We have a USB here. One's here, so it looks like we have two USB-A 3.2 Gen 1s and one USB-C 3.2 Gen 1. And the HDMI port on it is a 2.1, that's really nice, actually. So this is a USB 3.2, a USB-C 3.2, HDMI 2.1, and then we have a Gigabit Ethernet, Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.2. No ports on the back, one exhaust on the back. And then on the right side, we have another exhaust, another USB-A 3.2, and a headphone port. So the ports on this guy are definitely very minimal. Power adapter port is also on the right side. It's a little interesting. So the power adapter port's right there on the right side. It has a really nice backlit keyboard. This keyboard's actually a really great keyboard for the money. And I believe this is a glass touchpad. I think this is a glass touchpad. It feels like glass. And notice the keyboard on a 15.6 inch even has a number pad. This is the exact same keyboard as the GT77, which, isn't that interesting? A GT77, it's like the same layout, but this is a 15-inch budget laptop. The other thing that I will say about this keyboard is that it feels really good to type on, like, for the money. Okay, this is a better keyboard. I did the XMG Neo 17 review yesterday, and that keyboard is a membrane keyboard kind of like this one, but this one actually has a nice shunk to the keys. Like, you press it, it has a nice key action, they go down, and it feels very deliberate, where the Neo 17 keyboard felt more like mush when you pushed them. You know, it just kind of felt like it didn't have the same shunkiness to it. All right, and then the backlight on this one is way brighter than the Neo 17. Just give you an idea, like, this is only one color. It's a baby blue color. It looks pretty cool though, and it feels really good to type on. And you do have the WASD keys, and notice how bright this keyboard backlight looks, even though my studio lights are on. It's an extremely bright keyboard for the money. I'm not saying it's the best keyboard necessarily for the money. All right, and it has 3 levels of brightness, so you can turn it on and off. Overall, I like the keyboard for the money. All right, it's a good keyboard layout, good keyboard design. The number pad, some people don't really like kind of the scrunchness of this number pad. I don't really mind it too much. I think it's still a very functional number pad, but it's not a full-size number pad. So just know that this is still, I think, one of the most functional keyboards you're going to get in a 15-inch chassis. There is no Windows Hello on this laptop. It's a budget laptop. They have no money for a Windows Hello. Like I said, the trackpad actually feels really good for the money as well. Like I said, I think this is a glass touchpad, but it might be plastic. It's hard. Sometimes it's hard to tell. Certain types of plastic have this similar feel, but either way, this keyboard and trackpad feel really good for the money. Given how sturdy and rigid this thing feels, the input for the keyboard and trackpad are above average, I think, for this price point. The thing is, the ports are not that good. At least the quality of ports you have are good. The amount of ports is very poor. Only 2 USB-A's, 1 USB-C, no SD card slot, no mini display port, no extra USB-Cs, no Thunderbolt 4 support, and the Wi-Fi is only Wi-Fi 6, not 6E, but at least it is Bluetooth 5.2. So there is some pros and cons to the connectivity of this device. Here's the display. It's a 15.6-inch, 144 hertz full HD display. This is going to mean a few different things. You're going to have some decent gaming potential on the display, given that it's 144 hertz, but not all 144 hertz displays are made equal. A lot of 144 hertz displays are kind of crappy. You got to understand that some of them are going to have higher brightness, better color gamut, better contrast, and this is going to arguably be one of the worst displays money can buy in 2023. Pretty good for backlight bleed. There's not much backlight bleed on this panel. Let's turn all the lights off though. There's a little bit of backlight bleed along the bottom edges here, a little bit up here. The camera is picking it up a bit more than me as a user would pick it up though. Backlight bleed is the kind of thing you would experience if you're watching, say, a dark movie or playing a dark video game. That's basically what when backlight bleed comes into play with the display panel, and you'll end up seeing some kind of like white bars or white images coming up. Overall, the backlight bleed on my unit is very minimal, I would say. All right, so we're gonna begin our tests. We're gonna test a color gamut and our display brightness. And I'm not expecting too much. I'm thinking we're gonna get around 250 nits and 50% sRGB. I don't know, somewhere in that range. It's not, this display, we already know, it's not that vibrant. It's not that bright. It's a budgeted display, and it's as budget-ish as you can possibly get in a entry-level laptop, right? It's definitely gonna be very budget. Looks like our test is done. Let's find out what we get. All right, wow, this is a little higher than I was expecting. Got 64% sRGB, 49% of Adobe RGB, 48% of the P3 color gamut. And you gotta keep in mind that my Spyder 5 Elite underestimates the color gamut by about 8 to 9% usually. So in reality, this is closer probably to like 71, 72%, maybe 73% of the sRGB, 56% Adobe, 56% P3. Our color brightness, or our brightness and contrast, 12 nits on the low end is very dim. I like that. Good contrast ratio at that level too. 233 nits on the screen brightness. 1100 to 1 contrast ratio. The contrast ratio is very good. The brightness is very poor for a laptop display. This is only gonna let games look pretty decent in a fairly darker room. Okay, so if you're in a very bright living room, it's gonna be a little hard to see the display. And if you use this laptop outside, you're basically not gonna be able to see the display at all in the daylight. The only place where you're gonna be able to use this laptop display effectively is gonna be moderate to dimmer environments, indoor areas mainly, all right? The contrast ratio at 1100 to 1 is actually above average for laptop displays these days. So it's got that going for it. And the color gamut was a little bit better than I had anticipated, actually. This is very similar display, probably the same panel as what's in the Katana 15 that costs $1599 or $1499. You can definitely get better displays for the money, right? Like the MSI Delta 15, 240 hertz full HD, that should be like a 300 nit display, I believe. So if we go back, it costs $899 and it's got a much better display with more RAM and a bigger SSD here. So I really like, just if you're looking for something with a better display, this is going to be a better display for the money and more graphical performance probably for the money. I haven't tested it though, so it might not be better graphical. And I've got the mic. We're going to hold it about 10 inches in front of the laptop, kind of about where your head would be if you were going to be using this laptop. All right, speakers are turned all the way up. All right, Peter Spacey Roar for our first song. That actually was better than I anticipated. Okay, and last song is La La La, Deuce Williams.
I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la. I love you like la 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 la.
Okay, well, the vocals were pretty good, actually. So that means the mids are doing pretty good. I feel like the highs broke up the most, and there was very little bass. There was a little bit of bass. There is not that strong of bass. It makes sense. I think we have two tweeters in this. Let me check the tech specs real quick. Two 2-watt speakers. So the speakers are not, it's not a huge system. So they're just gonna be kind of like average-ish. I'd probably give them a rating. That was pretty good volume. I'm probably thinking like a 6 or maybe like a 6.5, somewhere in that ballpark for the rating for the speakers. There's definitely a lot better speakers in other more expensive laptops, but for an $1,100 price point, I feel like it was actually surprisingly good. It kind of surprised me. I thought they would be worse than that. We did see them when we took the bottom of the laptop off, and they were pretty large speakers for two 2 watts, 2-watt speakers. So, all right, so. My hand is not accidentally touching the key, the touchpad at all. That's good. As far as using it to scroll, it seems to work pretty well for scrolling. The click feels good. The right click, it's a good size. Like this whole touchpad, it's a well-implemented touchpad for this price point. I like it. All right, so our Intel i7-12650H has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 P cores and 4 E cores. So 6 P cores that are double threaded for basically 6 P cores, 12 threads plus 4 E cores and 4 threads means that this is a 10 core, 16 thread CPU. 10 cores, 16 thread. Yep. Think about it. We're going to be benchmarking and testing this laptop. It has only one fan. How well can MSI cool this laptop with only one fan? And what kind of CPU performance can you get with only one active air-cooled fan, right? This is the software that you're going to use to control this laptop. So this software is going to give you some basic stats on what's going on with your laptop right here. Inside of features, you click on that and then you can go to gaming mode if you want. The primary area that you're actually going to use though is not this area. This area is pretty much useless. The user scenario is where you're going to want to go to change your modes in your laptop. You can do smart auto, which is going to use AI to try to match what you need with the system. I personally probably would never use that. I'd either be in extreme performance mode, balanced, silent, or super battery mode. So depending on what you're wanting to do, most of the time you're probably going to be in extreme performance mode, unless you're trying to be quiet or maximize your battery, in which case you'll either be in silent or super battery. Inside of the extreme performance mode, there's also additional settings called Cooler Boost. This is going to maximize your fans. Let's go ahead and see how loud this single fan is. So I'm holding the mic right next to the fans right now. Let me try turning them off again. So that's max fans right there. And this is how loud it sounds when you're about a foot away from the laptop. It's not that loud, but it's definitely very noticeable, I would say. It's kind of like probably in like the 55 to 56 decibel range of sound. It's a not quiet, but not too loud either fan noise. Okay, all right, here we go. We're gonna pop into Cinebench. Let's run our multi-core. We're gonna do it a couple of single runs first, and then we're gonna do a 10-minute test. We're doing 3.6 gigahertz on the P cores, 3.2 gigahertz on the E cores. Our temps are actually staying really good at 72 and 80. Let's see if they stay good consistently. Our CPU package power is 77 watts. That's actually very good watts for a single fan unit. What? Okay. I'm kind of impressed with the amount of watts this thing's able to pull, at least through the CPU. Okay, that kind of took me by surprise. I was expecting more like 45 or 50 watts, but we're doing 75 watts consistently throughout this run. 77. But this i7 doesn't really have that many cores and threads compared to the new i9 processors. You know, 10 core, 16 thread is not that many. All right, so we got 13,871 for our first run. Let's go for a second run. That is very good. That's going to let you do video editing, video rendering, no problem on this laptop. Though this display is not that great, so it's not really going to be very color accurate or very vibrant for video editing, Photoshop, stuff like that. But it would do the task just fine. 67 watts now, going through the CPU, down to 52 watts on the CPU. Interesting. I wonder what we're going to get for our overall wattage. Interesting. 55 watts now. It seems to be stabilizing at 55 watts for the long power limit. I was really thinking we were going to be throttling down to like 35 or 45 watts. And look at our temps now. Our temps are actually sitting pretty stable. 73 degrees on average, 80 degrees on the package. And our clock speeds, let's check out our clock speeds, 3.2 gigahertz, 3.3 gigahertz, and 2.9 gigahertz. So now we're doing 11,887 for our second run. Let's do a third run and see what we get. I'm thinking we've reached stability now as far as performance goes. Ooh, did we just have a... Okay, no, we didn't have a crash. So process lasso can make things be a little funky. Prioritize certain tasks. It can make the rest of Windows a little bit laggy. Which is part of why I do it, though, anyway, because we want to make the rest of Windows not interfere with our test. Surprisingly better than expected CPU performance, if I'm being honest. Do we have any potential for increasing the performance on this laptop? Because these temperatures are very good. We could certainly raise the power limits up to like 65, 70 for the long power limit and still be well below thermal throttling. You could definitely increase the performance of this laptop a bit higher with a little bit of tuning. 11,900. We'll do one more run. I'm pretty sure we've reached stable performance now at this point. For a budget laptop, budget CPU, I feel like that's very good out of the box performance. All right, so we got 11,800. Let's go ahead and give it a moment to breathe. And we're going to go ahead and start a 10-minute test. Looking at our initial power draw, we're doing 77 watts. You could definitely probably do 80 watts of continuous throughput on the CPU in this MSI Cyborg, which I was absolutely not expecting. And if you could undervolt this guy at the same time, I think you could probably push 14 to 15K consistently in Cinebench R23, which is, I think, very impressive for the $1,100 price point, or at least it's pretty dang good. Core clocks have averaged 3.05 on the P cores, 2.8 on most of the E cores. Our average core temp is 71 and 76 on the package. So very, very good temps. 55 watts on average to the CPU. is a pretty good amount of wattage for a single fan setup. Wow, we actually scored a little bit higher than what we did in our single runs. We got 12,008. Sorry, 12,008 for our 10-minute test. That is pretty dang good. Let's go ahead and try installing Intel XTU. We're gonna agree and not show. Okay, so it looks like everything's locked down except our power limits. So no undervolting. I wonder if our power limits will apply. Let's try raising the power limit up all the way to 81. And I'll raise our power boost window up to 128 as well. Let's see if this applies in our Cinebench runs. All right, so let's take a look at our power limits. We're doing 81 watts, just like we said, or just, well, now it's doing 84 watts, 80.2 watts, 84 watts. What? Okay. All right, we're getting higher temps. Look at, we're doing 90 degrees on the package, 83 on the core. That's still within reasonable temps. 81 watts on the CPU still. Let's see if this holds, see if this maintains. We are getting to thermal throttling levels now on the CPU, but our wattage is still staying nice and steady, very close to 80, occasionally dipping down just a little bit. So we're 3 minutes in. Did we drop in wattage yet? Oh, looks like we dropped in wattage. Our package power has finally reduced down, 48 watts. Interesting, that's even lower. All right, that's even lower than what we had in the previous test before we changed Intel XTU. So what that means is most likely the BIOS either had an emergency, like this wattage is too hot too long and it like overrode our wattages, or our power boost window ran out and now we're into the long power limit, which is, and it didn't override. It may have just taken our long CPU power limit and utilized the short limit for a longer boost window. That's what my guess is as far as what happened here. So what it appears is the turbo boost power time window, this increased. So you can use Intel XTU to boost the power time window to last longer, which, I mean, that is gonna speed up your CPU performance quite noticeably, all right? But we were able to increase our performance, but not for very long. We're gonna find out, all right? So we're on ray tracing on Ultra. Everything's on the highest preset right now. There's a few more things you could theoretically turn on to a little bit higher, but we're on the highest preset that they offer. We're gonna test this exactly how someone would actually want to play this game, right? They're gonna wanna probably play with frame gen, DLSS on quality, settings on Ultra. Our 1% lows are struggling a bit right there. Did you see we're only like doing 10 FPS for our 1% lows there? But our average FPS is actually pretty good. Average FPS is actually very good. Good enough to play. Getting 54 FPS on average right now. Oh, we got some stutters. I wonder what's causing our stutters to happen. Notice our GPU wattage is dropping occasionally down to 27 watts, okay? Right now, we also do not have GPU temperature or usage. So we might have to use HW info to fill in that data on our overlay, which I'm gonna do that as soon as this is done. Frame generation is enabled. It's interesting. These stutters, we're definitely getting some stutters right now. I wonder what's going on with that though. Super interesting. All right, so we averaged 57 FPS, but we had a number of stutters, which is not good. Balanced mode now, notice our wattage on our GPU is a bit higher. We're doing 39. Our problem, I think, was our CPU was taking too much juice, and I'm thinking that might be my fault because I went into Intel XTU and was playing with power limit settings, and that may have messed something up with the BIOS, causing our stutter to happen. All right, so that could be my own problem. It's a shame we're not seeing 45 watts on the GPU. Our performance is so much better now, right? We're not stuttering. We're getting smooth gameplay with 52 for our 1% lows is excellent. Does this GPU boost to 60 when it's a 45 watt 4060? No, I believe it maximum boost, I think, is 45. I gotta say, considering we're in ultra settings, this is pretty dang good performance. Giving us giving us very good performance overall, considering ultra settings. 72 FPS on average. Let me try setting us back to extreme performance. Now, obviously, this, I think, is a lower performance than what we saw on the 4060 in the Gigabyte G5. That has a 75 watt TDP limit. All right, let's just try to optimize for low settings with DLSS and frame gen. Well, DLSS on quality, frame generation on, with low settings. What are we getting if we optimize our gameplay to try to get like a smooth frame rate? 120 so far. Wow. That's actually pretty surprising. Like, I'm not saying you should buy this laptop. I definitely still think there are some other laptops that are pretty good options out there, but that's a really great frame rate in Cyberpunk if you wanted to play this game and you're not that picky about being on low versus ultra settings. You know, some gamers, you know, they'd prefer to play at higher frame rates rather than low, higher frame rates with low settings versus ultra settings and lower frame rates. And in this game, I would say in Cyberpunk, you'd really want to hit like 90 FPS would be my target. So I'd probably tune this thing to be somewhere in like the middle ground of settings. Masha, thanks so much with the €2 donation. I appreciate that. Slick Runner says, yeah, increased CPU power is not a good idea for this. Now we know though. Yeah, so, wow, 125 FPS for this test. I think that's 39 for our low. Or our min FPS, but our 1% lows were higher than that, actually. We're on ultra settings. DLSS is on quality. Full HD, 144 hertz, all of that's correct. Getting a little bit of low on the 1% lows, but this is still playable, especially given that it's kind of a slower single-player game. Though, I mean, when you're getting freaked out by crazy monsters coming at you in Dead Space, I don't know. It'd be a bit interesting. Okay, I also realized that my camera, I probably should down expose on my camera a little bit because it probably looks a little bit easier to see the image on the laptop now. So we're getting around the 60 FPS range on all ultra settings. Surprisingly pretty good FPS, at least in terms of like, you want a laptop where you get playable frame rates and the latest titles on the highest settings. We're still getting that, right? We're still getting that. We're getting a little stutter there. It was definitely a stutter at that point. All right, so we're ready to do our test. Look at our wattage right now. Our CPU is drawing 40 watts of power, 45. Our GPU is drawing less wattage below our cap at only 29 watts. Interesting, right? Like I said, this is a very CPU-focused game. Wildfire asks, do you know what the root cause of delayed typing could be? I don't know how to explain. Sometimes in typing or cursor skips back as though the letters weren't there. It happens on the i9 13900H and 13900HX. It could be that your CPU is tied up, or maybe you're maxing all of your RAM usage. Both of those are possibilities. Okay, so 58 FPS with 19 FPS for our low. Now, still very playable. If we were to try to optimize our settings here, you know, we were to go to, let's do DLSS on quality, but we'll just do low settings for our settings. I don't know, do we need to reset? What kind of FPS do we get going to low? Huh, the game looks exactly the same, it seems like, and our FPS is still the same. Ultra to low settings doesn't make a difference because we're CPU bound in this game. I'm just impressed that this laptop's able to play all the games at such a low wattage to the GPU, okay? Such a low wattage. It reminds me of the Steam Deck. Like the Steam Deck is only doing like 25 watts for the whole system and it's still putting out playable frame rates somehow. I'm just like, how is this possible? And yet we're only doing 30 watts in Dead Space and we're still putting out playable frame rates on ultra settings. I'm just like, okay, I guess this is how things are now. If you're looking for the next generation, like you're probably looking at a 4070 if you're looking at a $2,000 mark. Let's take a look at what we got. So we got 38 watts, 35 watts to the GPU, A good amount of wattage to the CPU, 35 watts. Our FPS on all ultra settings with ray tracing enabled, we're doing 66 FPS. That's going to be very playable. Of course, our 1% lows are low as it loads between the different scenes. Our RAM doing not quite maxing our 8 gigs of RAM right now, which is good. So, like I said, there are quite a few games out there that are not going to need more than 8 gigs of RAM, but there are going to be some that will probably really struggle, if they don't have 8 gigs. So I'm very curious to see how Hogwarts does still. Is ray tracing on? Yes, we have ray tracing enabled right now. So if you were to disable ray tracing, if you were to set the settings to low, you should be able to pump some really high FPS through this. Right now it's doing 73 FPS here on all ultra settings with ray tracing enabled, DLSS on quality, and frame generation enabled. So again, very playable frame rate at 74 FPS. Know that the way that it counts the FPS is wrong. And so in CSGO right now, we're doing 300, 400, 300, 400 FPS right there. Very good performance right now in CSGO. Let's see what our 1% lows look like going through the smoke. Pretty similar ballpark. All right, looking at our FPS, we're doing 80, 70, 60. Went down to about 60, 70 FPS in the smoke. So that's not amazing, but it's actually not that bad considering what this laptop is. All right, so 288 FPS in CSGO. That's fantastic. So that means that you're going to be able to play this laptop and get close to 240 FPS in CSGO on an external monitor. All right, so we're on ultra settings, 1080p. We're all set to continue. Let's hop into it. Our CPU is being pretty heavily utilized again. So right now we're doing 40 FPS right here. I'm just going to Alt-Tab. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to try balance mode. It's still the same. Wow, and the fans are so quiet now. Looks like we also got to open HW info. So there's our GPU temperature and our GPU utilization. I got to say, balanced mode is giving us better performance. Look at this. So we were getting 40 FPS before, but our CPU was pulling higher wattage. Our CPU was pulling 40 watts, and that was sucking wattage away from our GPU. And now that we've switched over to balanced mode, we're actually getting better performance, 10% higher performance at 44 FPS, 45, 44. Interesting. So extreme performance may not be the way to go. I don't know. Let's try extreme performance again. It also might be because of Intel XTU messing with things. I don't know. Let's see. We're in extreme performance. Notice now we're doing 40 watts on the CPU, 32 instead of 40. And our FPS is 4 less. So you might actually get better performance in GPU-bound games if you're utilizing balanced mode instead of extreme performance. Extreme performance seems to favor CPU. Seems to weight the CPU towards, it seems to weigh the wattage towards the CPU utilization. Let's test it in balanced mode because we're getting higher performance in balanced mode. So this is some pretty dang good FPS for ultra settings. We had a stutter there, dropping our 1% lows down to 12.
What did you find?
Tracks. Not deer though. I'll keep looking.
Okay, so we ended up with 47 FPS with 16 for our 1% lows because we had that stutter. It was really smooth except for that one moment with the stutter. Let's try our low settings. All right, so we're on all low settings. Let's see what kind of FPS we get with low settings. Oh, wow, we're getting closer to 100 FPS now in low settings. And low settings still looks pretty dang good. We're walking now. Does this have DisplayPort? No, it does not have DisplayPort. It has a USB-C 3.2 Gen 1, so I'm not sure if that'll do DisplayPort, what level of DisplayPort that'll do. But it does have HDMI 2.1, so it has a good HDMI. So that you can use the HDMI to do high-end display output, basically. All right, so we got 90 FPS in low, 50 for our 1% lows. This is gonna play games just fine. The bigger question so far, it's been able to play every single game we've thrown at it on ultra settings, but when you switch it to higher low settings, we get dramatically higher FPS as you'd expect, right? So we are gonna do, right now we're on all low settings. We might as well test low settings since it's loaded up. And then we're gonna restart the game and switch everything to ultra with ray tracing on. Well, I guess we gotta run up here first. Oh yeah, look at our stutters we're getting. We're still getting quite a bit of stutters. We've maxed out our RAM here at 7.2 gigs of usage. Right now it's stuttering about every 3 seconds, like a stutter, 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 stutter. That was a big stutter. Our FPS is fantastic. If only we had 16 gigs of RAM, right? That's our problem right now. So let me just try one other area of the game on low. We'll try going to the forest. It's a little bit less demanding on the VRAM, I think. I just want to, like, obviously Hogsmeade is going to be a more demanding area. Let's try the forest. In certain moments, we're definitely getting some ghosting on the image, just like the Katana 15. So this is definitely not your ideal gaming laptop display, without a doubt. All right, without a doubt. And look at our stutters. It is going to be almost impossible to play this laptop, play this game with this laptop without stuttering frequently. Like, you need 16 gigs of RAM. You need it. Not VRAM, regular system RAM. You need 16 gigs. All right. Beautiful. All right, let's go ahead and go to our settings. We're going to set everything to ultra to do our actual test. And we're going to enable ray tracing. So far, we've been able to hit playable frame rates in almost every game. Hogwarts being the major exception so far, because holy schmoly, it's a struggle fest with only 8 gigs of RAM. All right, so we are stuttering. The stutters are long and very poor. I'm really tempted to try popping in an extra set of RAM at the end of the live stream. I just don't think we'll have time today. I think that'll be a separate live stream. So I want to point out that given our stutteriness, I can tell frame generation is struggling to prevent artifacts from coming up as often. Looking at like the cape here, I'm seeing a little bit more, like a little bit of artifacting around how it moves. But I mean, we're getting stutters all around, so it's kind of just not be a great experience when you're getting long stutters anyway, no matter what. All right, let's go ahead and do a run through Hogwarts and just see what we get. All right, so Hogsmeade. Actually, our 1% lows are doing better now than when it was all on low settings. I don't really understand that. And we're on ultra settings too. There was a big stutter there. But most of the time when we were running there, we actually didn't have that much stuttering there for the first half of the run. 51 FPS, 2 FPS on our 1% lows. Jesus Christ. Oh my goodness. Oh jeez. Oh, it was the long stutters, like a half-second stutters there sometimes. That's when you know you're out of RAM, when it's stuttering that long. See a cat, you got to pet a cat. All right. So, there's Hogwarts for you. Definitely not a good experience. Not recommended. Let's see if Red Dead Redemption will play for us. All right, so we're at 1080p. We want VSync turned off. All right, and then we click here and we go all the way to the right. And then we're just gonna go down here. So basically the game's on all ultra settings with no DLSS. That's the important thing. We want no DLSS. We just want it to be a raw run. We are unable to run Red Dead Redemption because I think MSI software blocks the Red Dead licensing key service, so it cannot authenticate the game properly. In this game, we are doing, like, it was doing initially 40 watts to the CPU and only 25 watts to the GPU, but we switched. Now we're doing 41 watts to the GPU, 43 watts to the GPU, 25 to the CPU. Hey, we're actually doing 44 watts, 46 watts. Wow. All right, that's phenomenal. I'm glad we're actually getting some proper wattage. This is the first game where we're seeing 45 watts to the GPU. RAM is maxed out again. Can you put in another stick? Well, Mitchell, it's interesting that our performance so far has actually been very good in every game except Hogwarts. Looking up at the sky here on the mountain, we're doing over 144 FPS. Actually doing pretty good. This game, all ultra settings, DLSS on quality, ray tracing on ultra. Again, still playable, all right? Even at the low wattage TDP of 45 watts to the GPU. So we got 86 FPS right here in the Cyborg 15 and Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So another game on ultra settings, 1080p, playing perfectly with no problem, even with the 8 gigs of RAM. Let's try Witcher 3. So ray tracing is on ultra, DLSS is on quality, 1080p frame generation enabled. On all ultra settings, it looks like it's still going to be pretty dang playable. 52 FPS. So far in our average. So one of the big differences between this laptop and one of the competitor laptops, the Acer Nitro 5, is I think the Acer Nitro 5 should have a higher TDP limit. The one that's being shipped to me right now from Newegg. So I'm very curious to see how that performs versus this one. Notice that we are pulling 45 watts on the GPU once again. All right, so 57, 46, that's excellent. Very playable. It's not gonna, let's just quickly try lowering the settings and seeing what we get like on low settings. It's a low, DLSS on quality, frame generation still enabled. All right, so on low settings, we're doing 128. So now we're in the 120s, right? So if you want to play on ultra, you get like 55, 60 FPS. You want to play on low settings for the high refresh rate 144 hertz display, you can do that and still get like 120 FPS in The Witcher 2, or in The Witcher 3, I mean. Here, okay, so, all right, so just moving around the mouse, I can see some ghosting on the display. And we're not hitting our 144 FPS cap here on high settings. All right, so let's go ahead and get started with a test. This is not bad. It's not an ideal esports gaming experience because of the ghosting. But I think most people who are more casual esports players that aren't as picky, they're going to be just fine with the display. But most hardcore gamers are going to want a different display. This has definitely got some noticeable ghosting. And its response rate is not terrible, though. Like, I feel like I can control my aim, but you got to also have, like, the ghosting can cause visual clutter in the gameplay, So, all right, let's try changing our settings to low. All right, so everything low except for textures. So if you're a hardcore esports player, I would say don't buy this laptop. Go buy the MSI Delta 15 that I talked about earlier in the live stream, because it is a much better esports gaming machine than this one. It may not be as good as single player games when you factor in frame generation as this one, but when you're just looking at esports gaming potential, the Delta 15 is going to be so much better than this laptop. All right. Like, to me, this laptop is more about someone who wants a thin, light, portable laptop. They're going to mainly game indoors. They don't need a very bright display. They're not very picky with their displays, or they're going to use it on an external GPU or an external display. And they're just going to play mainly single player games when they're using the laptop display. And they don't care about maximizing their all around performance. They're just like, they like the look of this one. I don't know. I think there's better bang for the buck options out there. So, but I'm still testing this, and I want to give it a full potential go, right, before I decide, can I recommend this or not? I'm giving it a fair shake, basically. I'll be happy with the Apex Legends performance of this laptop. Of course, you do have the, I actually heard them spatially to my right with the onboard speakers. Which was interesting. I was not expecting that. I've definitely got a little bit of spatial audio awareness here. Like I'm hearing left and right a little bit. And then my teammate is kicking tail right now. I have yet to get a kill, and this guy is... My teammate's got a bunch of kills. He keeps taking my kills, though. Oh. Oh my gosh, I keep getting shot by like 4 people at once. 150. Now we got a Mozambique, which is like one of the worst weapons in the game. So I think we'll be able to actually finish out this whole game because it's these games go fast. They only last like a couple minutes. I got the throwing knife. Overall, I mean, the ghosting is present. The ghosting is definitely something I notice. It definitely impacts my ability to aim. If you want an esports gaming laptop, get the MSI Delta 15 for $899. It's cheaper, has a bigger SSD, got 16 gigs of RAM in there. You just don't have DLSS support, frame gen support in that laptop. That's the biggest downside. But in terms of raw rasterization performance, that should be pretty competitive with this laptop. So, all right, so we are doing our full 45 watts of GPU wattage. Our CPU is doing around 18 to 20 watts. Ooh. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Only 7,544 points in Timespy. 7,544 points. Now, this is only a 45 watt part, so I feel like it's pretty good for a 45 watt part. But that is not that many points in Timespy. You know, what's amazing is that we were doing all of those games. All right, we were playing all of those games on ultra settings, high performance settings, and we were still getting playable frame rate in almost basically every game except Hogwarts today on the 8 gigs of RAM. I would not have guessed that we would get that high a frame rate in those games with this low of a Timespy score. Now, our CPU score is actually pretty good at 10,647 for this price point, given that it's an i7 12650H. I feel like the CPU score is very acceptable. The GPU score, though, that's what you get when you only have a 45 watt GPU. All right, pretty interesting. There's the webcam for you right there. It's better than the XMG webcam by a little bit, but it's not amazing. I mean, this will work for a Skype call. It's kind of your average crappy webcam from a gaming laptop, though. Certainly nothing special, but it'll work. And it worked. Like the color replication is definitely like a little bit dull and quite a bit noisy here in the image. But the webcam will work just fine for doing a quick Skype call or whatever. But if you need a higher end webcam, this is not the laptop for you. So what did we find out today about the Cyborg 15? The nits brightness on the display, 200 and like, what was it? 223, 230 nits approximately, I believe. About 70% sRGB on the screen, which is okay-ish for this price range. I prefer to get 100% sRGB on any gaming laptop that's like, to me, like the entry level of like a good display is 100% sRGB. So this is like a bare bones, super budgety display, not for someone that's very picky about their displays. We also saw some ghosting in esports titles. The contrast ratio on the display is pretty good though. So that's kind of how it might maybe fools some people into thinking that's a little better display than it is because of the contrast ratio. And if you're going to play indoors gaming primarily in dimly lit environments mainly, the display will work for playing games and you'll be able to enjoy your gameplay experience. It's not like it's not going to ruin your gameplay experience. The problem primarily with the display is primarily when you compare it to other laptops that just have better displays for the same money, right? If you want a better display for the same money, I went over a bunch of other options at the beginning of this live stream. Okay, and you can find links to all those laptops that I recommended in that section, okay? If you're after a laptop with a higher end display, don't buy this laptop. That's just a fact, okay? If you're gonna need to use this laptop in outdoor or brightly lit environments, again, I don't think I can recommend this laptop. If you're primarily gonna use it in a darker environment, this laptop will work. And if you're not picky about your color gamut, this laptop will also work for you in that scenario. The keyboard and trackpad I thought were very good for the price point. I like the layout overall for a 15-inch laptop. The webcam, which we did not test, let's go ahead and just do a quick webcam test. In terms of ports, the ports on this guy are pretty minimal, but at least the ports that are included on this laptop are high quality ports with USB-C 3.2 and HDMI 2.1, which is let you do a high refresh rate display like the one behind me. So at least you got some options if you want to do like 4K 120 hertz for some reason. Not that you'll be able to play very many games at that resolution, like almost none, only like esports games, maybe some of them. But like you could do QHD 240 hertz displays for some esports games on this laptop and realistically hit 240 frames per second, probably in some titles like CSGO, Valorant, stuff like that are attainable on a laptop like this. But that's only for esports games, not your typical AAA gaming titles at all. The fan noise on this guy is moderately loud for a single fan. It gets up to like 55, 56 decibels, which is fairly loud for a one fan system. That's only in extreme performance mode. In balanced mode, we were seeing minimal fan noise and the speakers do get moderately loud. So you can definitely play some games on this with your balanced mode, like Cyberpunk or whatever. And that was the big thing for me with this, is that if you do want to play games and you're willing to tweak the settings, well, even if you don't tweak the settings, you can get playable frame rates in every game we tested except for Hogwarts. If you want to be able to play Hogwarts, you need to slap a second 8 gig stick of RAM in here. That's the big drawback here. Some games like Star Citizen, Hogwarts, you really want 16 gigs of RAM. 8 gigs is simply not enough. That's a very important consideration. If you buy this laptop, I would plan on getting 16 gigs of RAM because just using an internet browser and using different tasks on the machine will use up all 8 gigs of RAM. You might even get reduced performance in your Windows usage of the device. So plan to buy an additional 8 gig stick if you get this, but most likely, if in an ideal world, I would really recommend other laptops with better displays over this laptop. Now, if you did buy this laptop, you can still get great frame rates and in games, right? Like you can still enjoy the crap out of your gaming experience with this machine. It's not like it's an awful gaming experience. I think that's the important takeaway from this review is that while this thing is, I think, a mediocre value at $1,100, it's still a functioning laptop. We had no deal breaker problems like we did with the Gigabyte G5 with the power adapter cutting out on us. Like we reliably played games, no problem, except for Hogwarts. I think the ideal price range for this though is not $1,100. If you're gonna buy the Cyborg 15, wait for it to go on sale. Buy it for like, I feel like an RTX 4050 version of this should be $700. An RTX 4060 version of this should probably be $800. That's a good value. $800 for this is a good buy. Given its display quality and all the ports and everything included, at $1,100, it's just to me overpriced for what you're getting. That's kind of my takeaway right now. I think this laptop will go on sale later this year, probably for like $900 at least. And at $900, I'd say it's a decent deal. $800 would be an excellent deal. $700 for the 4050 version would be a great deal. $900 for the 4050 version will be an okay deal. But I can pretty much guarantee you we will see Black Friday sales on this laptop coming up for that $800, $900 price range for the 4060. So can I recommend this laptop? Yes, especially if you can get it on sale, but not really because there's better laptop options out there. Does that make sense? Like it's a functioning, decent quality, all-around experience playing games on here, but it's just not as good as what you would get if you bought that MSI Delta 15, the Zephyrus G14 for $1,000. But there's going to be other options too with 4060 and 4050 GPUs around this price point that I think will be better than this one. That'll have higher TDPs, that'll have better displays. This one's available first, so a lot of people are interested in this one and figuring out if it's worth buying. And that's why I really wanted to focus on covering it, giving you guys a real true hands-on experience with it. Because I think it's important to recognize that this can play games. It can play games really well. And someone who's not that picky with their display would probably love this laptop. I don't know. It's got a nice look to it. It's got a good keyboard, good trackpad. Using the laptop in general will be just fine, especially if you upgrade the RAM to 16 gigs. I think that's a fair summary of the device. That's it for this live stream, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. Brandon, out.